In the name of the Creator, the Christ, and the Holy Comforter. Amen. You may be seated. So this past week has been one of immense thankfulness for me. And what I mean by that is I've been crying a whole heck of a lot. Have y'all ever been so thankful, your heart so full of gratitude that you cannot help but just physically cry from the joy of it? That's been my week. It started last Sunday when we all gathered together for the blessing of the animals and just the chaotic joy that brought, of all of us coming together as the church family and bringing the extended church family. I can't get out of my head at the 9:30 service the chirping of little chicks throughout the entire service, and at all three, the barking and the yelps of dogs and the cries of children, the chaos. It's something to give such thanks for. I cannot help but have been moved to tears on Tuesday when we had our first Tuesday event. On a cold, rainy night, 21 people came out, and they brought food and themselves and their family, and we ate lots of food. And we got to know people we didn't know. We got to learn things about those that we have met but didn't know well enough. And we enjoyed our time together. There was nothing put upon us to provide something or produce something. It was about being present and being thankful for the gift of God and God's family. And before you leave today, I invite you to share in that thankfulness a little bit by coming and looking at the two murals that we have hanging up in our sanctuary. One of our activities was to create murals of the church and what it means to us and what the church looks like. So on this side of the sanctuary, this is a mural of the church as depicted in the Acts of the Apostles, the early church. And on this side, the second group made a mural of the church as it is today, our inherited community. And I think you'll find some distinctions, but a lot of similarities between the two. So I invite you to experience that. But thankfulness has been the theme of my week, so much so that just a couple nights ago, as I was laying in my bed going to sleep, I had my husband to the side of me, and we had the dogs in the bed, which when they're there, that means this is Dominique's side of the bed, this is my side of the bed, and those two little dogs that y'all saw, they had all of this. And I couldn't help but just be moved to tears out of thankfulness. No matter the hardships and the struggles and the frustrations I had in my week, my heart just overflowed at how present God has been in all parts of my life. And this, I think, is an important thing for us to hold on to and lean into in our lives, because to be a follower of Jesus, to be a Christian, is to live a life of thanksgiving. How many of us have heard the term a Eucharistic life? Okay, a couple of us. All right, more in the service than the other two. But a Eucharistic life, what does that mean? It might denote for some of us who haven't heard the term but can kind of fudge our way through it, that it has something to do with Holy Eucharist at this table. And it very much does. Because you see, to live a Eucharistic life is a very physical embodiment of gathering together as the church week after week to receive Holy Eucharist, to receive the bread and the wine, and to celebrate and give thanks to God for all the blessings of our life. Even when we're stressed and anxious, even when things seem that they're at their darkest, there's still God's presence that we give thanks for. That's why whenever we gather at this table, that no matter what the Eucharistic prayer is, the beginning part is always the same. The Lord be with you. Lift up your hearts. Let us give thanks to the Lord our God. I got that right. The other two services, I flubbed that, if you can believe it. But it denotes and it raises for us that what we do at this table, what we do in worship, is about giving thanks. The word Eucharist comes from us from the Greek Eucharistos, which means thankfulness, thanksgiving. So when we gather for a Holy Eucharist, we are gathering for holy thanksgiving. But living a Eucharistic life, or a life of thankfulness, doesn't just stop at what we do here. It's about walking through all parts of our days and all parts of our lives throughout the week, seeking where God is blessing us and just providing the praise and the gratitude for all that God has done within in every single bit that we do in our lives. It's this theme that we see raised up in the Gospel of Luke today as Jesus is journeying through the borderlands of Samaria and Galilee. We hear this tale of Jesus healing 10 lepers and one coming back, returning to give thanks. Now let me give a little bit of background and contextualization to this, I think, for us to fully understand what's happening here and how it ties to thankfulness. So when Jesus is walking through the land of Galilee and Samaria, this is a big thing that Jesus is doing. Because you see, during this day and time, Galilee is a part of the nation of Israel, the Jewish tribe, the Jewish family. Samaria is related, connected to, but is seen as lesser than, unclean, impure. This is because as the nation of Israel was coming in, the Hebrew people were coming into the Holy Land, there was intermixing between some of the Jewish people and some of the local inhabitants. And the faith tradition, as was handed down by Moses, began to shift and look a little bit different. There was intermarriage, interreligiously and interculturally. And so to be from Samaria was to be from the wrong side of the tracks, the wrong side of the border. And then to be a leper in this day and age. Leprosy is a disease that we still have around today. The good news is we have medicine for it. We can cure it, we can treat it, so it doesn't become a hindrance. But in Jesus' day, leprosy, this upper respiratory infection, caused all these scaly skin lesions. And there was no cure. You were considered unclean, and you were pushed to the borders of society, to the margins of society. Again, separated from the community. And so it's a big deal that we hear Jesus walking through this borderland of Galilee and Samaria, neither being in one or the other. Jesus' placement is telling us something, and it's connected to this healing. Because you see, Jesus, by walking through that borderland, is essentially erasing that border between the haves and the have-nots, the clean and the unclean, the right and the just, and the marginalized and the oppressed. Jesus erases all of that. And the 10 lepers that come to him and say, "Heal us," Jesus heals. Note that there's no conditions put upon it. Jesus didn't ask, "Are you from Galilee or from Samaria?" He didn't say, "Are you Jewish or non-Jewish? Where do you come from?" Jesus didn't ask any of that. God's love healed all. And that is something to give thanks for. Because what Jesus is proclaiming here is that the love of God is not contingent upon where you live or what side of the border you live on. It's not contingent upon whether you have leprosy or not, or having right thought or right purity or incorrect thought or purity, whatever it is. God's love is unconditional. God's love is freely given to everyone. And those borders that we like to create to separate ourselves are nothing to God. There's an image that circulates quite often in Episcopal Facebook world. And it's this image of a bunch of people like us, and we've got these large, ginormous pencils, and we're busy drawing squares around ourselves, boxing ourselves in, creating borders to separate us from other people. And in the middle of the image is Jesus, and he has one of those huge pencils, but it's flipped on its head. So the eraser is on the ground, and just as fast as we are drawing those lines, Jesus is coming behind and erasing it. That is something for us to give thanks for. That no matter where we come from, who we are, no matter what our skin color, the language that we speak, no matter what the world says in terms of our ability to produce anything or not produce anything, God's love is overwhelming, unconditional for everyone. And this is why the witness of this Samaritan is so important. Because this is someone who has known that marginalization, that pushing away in more than one way. He knew it as a Samaritan and knew it as a leper. This is someone who knew what it meant to be truly on the outskirts. And when his life is healed, when he is made well, he returns to God to give thanks. The other 9, we don't know what happened to them. We just know they don't return back to God, and there's no judgment on that from me. But I do think that what Jesus underscores for us is how the Samaritan responds to God's goodness. God's unconditional love is how we are called to model our lives in thankfulness and responding to that love by expressing gratitude, by returning to God, by living a Eucharistic life. And that's not something that's for us, it's for the world. Because part of thankfulness and gratitude is expressing it, is proclaiming it, it's sharing it with others and inviting them in. It's about how we walk in the world and how we meet the challenges and the struggles. And so I leave us with that, and I invite us to reflect on it this week. Where are the spaces that we are called upon to give thanks to God? How are we recognizing the miracles, the healings, the moments when God's love touches us and changes us forever? How are we offering thanks for that? And how, through that thanksgiving, do we share it with others? To embody that love in how we act? How do we invite them